Hello there. Well, welcome to the first of a nightly reading. I thought I'd choose Day of the Doctor, partly because of the wonderful tweet-along thing that happened a few days ago. We got Rose on Thursday at 7 p.m. UK time. Looking forward to that. People are going to be stuck inside. They're going to be wondering what to do. So, well, apart from anything else, to keep myself occupied, Every weeknight, I will be reading a chapter from a book, and once the book's finished, I'll go and read something else. I've chosen Day of the Doctor because I'm quite frankly a masochist. So, yeah, chapters are quite long. Word of warning there. So, here we go then. Take my headphones off. I don't need my headphones or my glasses. Doctor Who and the Day of the Doctor by Steven Moffat. Feed connecting. Feed connected. Feed stable. Please adjust focal length if required. Oh, sorry, I'm early. You can skip this bit. No, really. I'll see you after the first chapter. Just turn the page. Look. Seriously, I just put my teacup on the send button. Just please, move on. Oh dear, you're still here. The trouble is, you see, I'm writing this live. The longer you keep reading this bit, the longer I have to keep writing it. You're delaying the book for everyone, quite frankly. Oh, and now you're all giggling. I knew releasing a book on psychic paper was a mistake, but this lot, they love a gimmick. Please just turn the page. Or, if you're listening to the audiobook version, fast forward. And those of you reading on one of those computer tablet things, please understand, you are the only species in the universe who thinks they're a good idea. Oh, for heaven's sakes. If you're going to loiter about, I suppose I might as well do some introductions. Apologies for any typos, as I have been trying to explain. This section of the book is being written live, and I am connecting with the page in front of you through a psychic space-time link, and of course maintaining as many cognitive paper interfaces across the multiple time zones required for thousands of individual readers. It can play havoc with your spelling. Also, I just spilled lemon sherbet on my keyboard and the R is a bit sticky, but we'll soldier on, okay? Sorry, but who's talking? And please don't talk whilst I'm writing. It's tremendously rude. Thank you. Oh, someone just closed the book and put it back on the shelf. I think they're in a bookshop. Well, that's not very encouraging when I'm just about getting started. Never mind, we're better off without them. Oh, they're off to the crime section now. Probably more their level, quite honestly. Okay, the rest of you. Eyes on page, we're all in this together. Please don't skip forwards or backwards, because I hate having to repeat myself, especially in advance. Now, the Doctor papers, which form the bulk of this book, will not be written live. These bits are only live because I got a tiny bit sloppy about the deadline. In fact, I regret to inform you that I'm writing to you from 10 years in the future. Yes, I know, very poor, but there's nothing like seeing your own book on sale to remind you to write it. We're going to start with Chapter 8. Bit unusual, I realise, but this being the story of the end of the Time War, there really is no correct order in which to tell it, and the events on Khan are as good a place to start as any. Also, I like the number 8. It's bobbly, like two jellies on top of each other. This chapter is known as The Night of the Doctor. It is a document from an unimpeachable source written by one of the participants in that strange drama. The circumstances of its composition are complex and disputed, but the identity of its author should become clear in the reading. Indeed, this is your first challenge, students. Read with close attention. Our subject is authorship. Question 1 is, who is speaking? See you afterwards for a full discussion of this, the first of the Doctor papers, or the 8th, whatever. What follows is a true story of how the Time War ended, though not necessarily in that order. By the way, these pages should be appearing in italics. If not, please just give 3 light taps on any verb and the page will reboot. And if you don't like any aspects of my prose style, give the book a good shake. That should help work off your irritation. Apologies for the dog. Chapter 8. The Night of the Doctor. On the day I killed him, the Doctor was a happy man. Though since what made him happy was a distress call from a terrified woman who died less than 7 minutes later, my conscience is clear. At the time, he was in his 8th and final incarnation. My memory of his appearance is a little hazy, but I have a general impression of dark hair, urgent blue eyes, and a choice of clothing that was probably intended to be swashbuckling. I think they were long boots, possibly a waistcoat, and certainly one of those overcoats with the kind of collar that young men turn up against the wind, in the hope that someone might use the word Byronic. He wasn't young, of course. No one can be called young on the day of their death, when they're as old as they will ever be. But the voice echoing around the creaking wooden cathedral of the TARDIS console room was young. Young enough and more than adequately terrified. Hello? Please? Hello? Can anyone hear me? This ship is crashing. Please, is anyone there? Can anyone hear me? It should be remembered, this was at the heart of the Time War, that endless, savage conflict between the Daleks and the Time Lords that threatened every moment of the time continuum. It is strange to reflect that the deadliest conflict history will ever know began between a race of traumatized mutants sealed into tiny battle tanks and an enclave of time-travelling academics who had sworn to never interfere in the affairs of the wider universe. However, the day came when the Time Lords of Gallifrey decided that the Dalek mutants posed a threat to all reality, and so attempted to use their time-travel abilities to cancel them from existence. The attempt failed, and the Daleks used their own time-travel machines in a similar attempt to cancel out the Time Lords. And so time became a weapon in a war that could never end, and the conflict spread not only through space, but backwards and forwards through history. Days became battle lines, and century turned on century, and divergent time streams found themselves fighting each other for the right to exist. It was said one soldier could die 1,000 times in one day of that war, and discover he'd never been born the next. And so when the Doctor heard that cry for help, there would have been countless billions across the universe suffering in exactly the same way. But this young woman had an advantage over all the others, who, in that same moment, were also screaming and begging for their lives. She happened to be in earshot of a man who mistook himself for a hero. The Doctor had always loved distress calls. They appealed to his vanity. He lived for the thrill of stepping through a door and seeing all those faces turn towards him in hope and wonder. The danger, too, was delicious. More than delicious. Over time it had become necessary. Danger is the only true palliative for a guilty man, and certainly the only drug strong enough for the Doctor. Setting aside his tea, it took him seconds to track the signal to a little gunship tumbling towards a red planet. There was one life sign on board, and all the engines were phasing. Clearly there was no possibility of deflecting the ship's course, and a tractor beam would almost certainly shatter the hull, so a manual extraction was the only possibility. He would have to materialise on board, introduce himself as dramatically as possible, and get her into the TARDIS. She would be so happy and excited to see him. He wondered briefly how it would look if he took his teacup with him, but decided the risk of spillage was too great. "Please, please, somebody, please!" The fear in her voice would have broken any heart. The Doctor grinned. For the very last time he slammed the levers, roared the engines, and sent the TARDIS spinning to the rescue. Although there was no one else to hear, he laughed and whooped. If anything sealed his fate in that final hour of his existence, It was his laughter. I never wanted to hear that laugh again. The owner of the voice was a young woman called Cass Fermazzi. She was clever and brave and doomed. In later years, when I was able to return her remains to what was left of her family, I learned that she'd grown up on one of the farm planets of the Garazone Belt and had stoned away on a star freighter at the age of 14 to see the wonders of the universe, and found there were really no wonders left. Instead, there was a war that threatened all reality. At first she ran, but one day, helping an old soldier die in a crater full of mud snakes, under a burning moon, she realized there was nowhere left to hide. The following morning, the kindly medtech who closed the soldier's eyes unclipped the bandolier from around the dead man's chest and gave it to Cass, perhaps mistaking her for a friend or relative. Cass took the bandolier, tightened it around herself, and decided to start running in the opposite direction. 3 months later, she was crewing a gunship. 4 years later, she had survived the Nightmare Child, wept at the massacre of Skull Moon, and fought in the ruins of the Alterium. On the last day of her life, she and her crew successfully repelled a Dalek fleet from the feeding hives of the Vantros. But then, as they flew to safety, they found themselves under attack from one of the Time Lord battlecruisers, now as indiscriminate in their slaughter as the Daleks themselves. They were blasted from the stars, for no better reason, Cass realized, than that they were blocking the view of the retreating Daleks. She'd been the only one who didn't panic. She'd teleported the crew to the safety of the nearest planet, and with no one left to teleport her, and realizing that a safe crash landing was now an impossibility, she'd finally called for help. "Help me, please! Can anyone hear me? Help me!" She slammed the overheating console with both fists. "Please state the nature of your ailment or injury," said the medical computer. "I'm not injured, I'm crashing! I don't need a doctor!" Cass screamed. "A clear statement of your symptoms will help us provide the medical practitioner appropriate to your individual needs." A simulated face appeared on the screen and made an attempt at an encouraging smile, only marginally less comforting than the created surface of the planet now filling the viewplate. "I'm trying to send a distress call. Stop asking me about doctors." It was a feed line that the hungriest ego in the universe could hardly be expected to resist. "I'm a doctor," came a voice behind her, "but probably not the one you were expecting." Cass spun round and saw a man who was making a particular point of leaning casually against a wall. 1,000 questions lit up in her head, but he was already stepping forward to the console. "Where are the rest of the crew?" "Teleported off, but you're still here." His hands were now busy at the controls. Was he checking she was telling the truth? "I teleported them." "Why you?" Everyone else was screaming. He looked at her and smiled like she'd passed a test. "Welcome aboard." "Aboard what?" "I'll show you." And suddenly he had taken her hand. When did she tell him that was okay? And she was yanked out of the command chair. The ship howled and creaked, and the main corridor was twisting and flexing, so it felt like running inside a thrashing snake. There was a harsh stink of molten metal, and she could feel the heat of the floor thumping against her boots. Her sleep pod was ablaze, and everything she'd ever owned was gone. "Where are we going?" she managed to ask. "Back of the ship." "Why?" "Because the front end crashes first. Think it through." A joke? Was he joking? Was this man wasting breath on jokes right now? And where the hell did he come from anyway? And hang on, did that mean he had a way off the ship? She felt a dangerous surge of hope. And in that moment, with a stomp of iron and the rest of the corridor disappeared, a blast door had slammed down across in front of them, blocking their path, and finally Cass Fermazzi knew she was going to die. "Oh, why did you do that?" she heard him muttering. But he sounded only mildly irritated, like a man trying to reason with a fugitive bar of soap in the bath. "Emergency protocols," she found herself explaining, like it even mattered now. There was a silver rod in his hand, and he buzzed it at the door. "What's your name?" he asked. Was he making conversation? Did he seriously think she was in the mood for a chat? "Cass." Oh. Apparently she was. You're young to be crewing a gunship, Cass. No, she wasn't telling her life story. This was not the time. I wanted to see the universe. Is it always like this? Why was she talking to him? If you're lucky, he grinned. And then the door was grinding open. Cass barely had time to wonder how he'd done it before he grabbed her hand again, and they were stumbling to a halt in front of... What the hell was that? It looked like a tall blue crate, wooden with panels and barred windows. Absurdly, there were the printed words Police Public Call Box above the doors, and there was really a light on top? And there was something else. Although Cass had never seen this box before, something stirred inside her like a race memory. Even a newborn knows to love the sunshine and fear the storm, and with that same ancient certainty, she knew that this battered old crate and what it meant. To her, to everyone, it was the purest evil. He was pulling her towards it now. Instinctively she pulled back. It's all right, he was saying, reaching for the blue doors. It's bigger on the inside. And then she understood the fear she felt. What did you say? Bigger on the inside? Is that what you said? Yeah, come on, you'll love it. Is that... The word choked in her throat for a moment. Even on a crashing ship, moments from death, it was a word that felt too dangerous to speak aloud. Is that a TARDIS? Oh, the look on his face. A wounded infant, the memory of better days and lost magic. Yes, he said, but you'll be perfectly safe, I promise. She wrenched her hand from his. Don't touch me! He started to reach for her again, but the look in her eyes stopped him cold. I'm not part of the war, he said. I swear I never have been. You're a Time Lord. He was. It was so obvious. The arrogance, the presumption. Yes, but I'm one of the nice ones. Oh, and now he thought he could be charming. Could they never understand what they were? Get away from me! Look on the bright side, I'm not a Dalek! She looked at him and felt the universe shift. But no. This is too much. I'm old and perhaps I'm getting carried away. Truthfully, no one can ever know for sure what was going through Cass's mind in that moment. But I do think I can guess. For us all there is a hill somewhere on which we would gladly die. If we were blessed one day, we will find it beneath our feet. That day had come for Cass. Dalek, Time Lord, who can tell the difference anymore? She said, and stepped backwards through the door. She slammed her hand on the red button and activated the incursion seal. Her ship, like all the others, had been proofed against Time Lords, and now was the time to see if it worked. She watched him through the plexi panel buzzing away with his silver rod. The jaw was shuddering, but it didn't open. Cass! Cass! It's deadlocked. Don't even try. Just open it. Please, I only want to help. To help? How could he think that anyone would believe that? Go back to your battlefield. You're not finished yet. Some of the universe is still standing. Oh, the joy of saying those words, of seeing them impact. I'm not leaving this ship without you. Those pleading blue eyes, that hunger to be trusted. More than that, to be worshipped, to be adored. Oh, dear God, was she supposed to think he was a hero now? They were all the same, these vain, willful children with their two hearts. But was he really going to stay and burn with her? Well, if that's what he wanted. Kaz Famazi smiled and felt the last moment of joy she would ever feel as she said, Then you're going to die right here. Best news all day. The ship was grinding and shrieking around her. The heat and light grew fiercer, but now it was exciting. Cass! He was shouting. Cass! Yeah, she thought, smiling into his silly, anguished face. Say my name. Say my name, Time Lord, and die. Which is exactly what the Doctor did. Though not for the last time that day. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I know it's not the full chapter, but they are very long chapters, and this isn't supposed to take forever. More tomorrow night, 10 p.m. GMT, over here, www.twitch.tv/McFadden. Okay, see you tomorrow.